to have Cherie Zoom connected also?
She's probably gonna be hopping on here in a second.
Concerts.
Lacey's coming too, so.
Can she make stuff, motions and votes and stuff tonight, you know?
It's not
It's
noticed.
not notarized.
I don't know the answer to that.
I'll just give my mouth shut.
You did a good
No, I'm
job
not
with the
trying to
first
repeat
one.
it, I don't want something to, you know, we
I
make
know.
some stupid, or we make a,
So let's just to be on the safe side.
She would be sworn in.
yeah, so I mean, if she's sworn in, I think that's, I don't have any problem doing it. I'm gonna swear it in, I mean, happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Lori,
We're not notarized, I think.
I have streaming on, but I'm just waiting for Cherie.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think for sure she votes and can, but I just, I don't want it to come back sometimes. Not that there's anything on here that we're gonna be, maybe the last thing, but that's.
All right, it is 6:01 and I will call the meeting to order. Alicia, would you do roll call, please?
Yep. Lacey Oster, here. Cherie Link. Gotta work on it. I'll get her up though. Michelle Lesha, here. Bruce Belargin.
Here.
Lori Belargin.
Here,
Matt Kukalt.
Here.
Marge Blow, here.
and I will take a motion to approve the agenda.
I make the motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Marge, and is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Matt. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. The next item on our agenda then is the installment of the oath of office for Michelle Lesha, our newest board member. And our clerk, Matt Foucault, will swear you in.
We go up front here?
I may want to take a picture here, so.
Pictures. Maybe we should face this way.
No, it's fine
Go by
either
the
way.
lectern.
Huh?
You should go up by the lectern.
Up here?
Alicia has that in on auto dial.
Yeah, stand at the front.
So I can stand here. Am I good?
Alicia, where do you want her?
Let's see what that, you
A little
can see on
closer?
here if you,
Get a little closer?
yep, there you go. That looks good.
Do you,
Do I have to put my hand up?
do we, yes, raise your right hand. Does she read this then?
Will you read it and she read, but you could give her a copy. I
Have
suppose you
second
don't
copy.
have a copy. Just read a little bit at a time.
Okay.
Alicia will pull it up.
All right, we ready?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll read it to you, then just repeat back, and then we'll have you sign it at the end. So I, Michelle Lesha,
I, Michelle Lesha,
who has been duly appointed to fill the vacancy of the Board of Education
who has been duly appointed to fill the vacancy on the Board of Education
of the School District of Somerset,
of the School District of Somerset,
but have not yet entered upon the duties thereof,
but have not yet entered upon the duties thereof,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Wisconsin,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability, so help me God.
and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll have you sign that and then we'll have it notarized.
Can you call Cherie back? She can't get the link to work. Please?
Sure. Hi Cherie, can you hear us?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear us, Cherie?
Yes, I can, thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is public comment, and I have 2 people that I'm gonna be calling. So I don't think I will cut you off, but will you text someone in case I do by accident?
Tell her text me.
Absolutely.
Okay, Mark asked if you would text him.
I'm sorry, text who?
Mark, if I do,
Mark? Okay,
yeah,
sounds good.
thank you. All right, so, Danielle Erickson.
You wanna do a public comment too?
Yeah. Gary Hansen.
You fill out
Yep.
the card quick, get you in.
Is there a red card up there?
Nope.
No,
Right
on
on
the
the
wall.
side,
On
along
the wall.
along the wall there. And then, Mark, here's a pen if you need one.
Why don't you take our second first? There you go. Got it. Oh, you're all set.
Danielle. Hello, Danielle. This is Lori Belargin. I'm calling from the board meeting. For the record, would you state your name, address, and then we'll go ahead with your comment.
My name is Danielle Erickson, and I live at 1975 62nd Street, Somerset, Wisconsin. My middle school son's on quarantine as he tested positive for COVID last night, which was Sunday night. On Saturday, he had a headache and some body aches, but he was able to play video games all day without needing to rest. By Sunday, which was yesterday, he was feeling much better. Today, he looks and feels completely back to normal, but is in quarantine until January 19th, with both of my elementary children out as close contacts until January 23rd. After contacting the health office this morning, I learned that because our children are unvaccinated, they have the long quarantine. Children who are fully vaccinated can stay in school, even though they test positive. This seems very discriminatory towards families who do not want to vaccinate their children with something that is officially experimental. And we all know by now that vaccinated people can infect other people. The CDC now says that people given the mild symptoms of Omicron, which is what we believe our son had, should quarantine for 5 days. And that is what I think our policy should be going forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you.
All right, and then our next one.
Is it Miller?
Rochelle.
Rochelle, Corey, are you and Rochelle separate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, she's gonna start, she's running kids around.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello?
Hello, is this Rochelle?
Yes, it is.
Hi, Rochelle, this is Lori Belargin. I'm calling from the school board meeting. Would you please state your name and address, and then we'll go ahead and make your public comment?
Sure. Rochelle Miller, 2047 West Church Road, Star Prairie, Wisconsin.
Thank you.
I'm calling today to discuss some information that some parents and I had requested an open records request on staff members, mostly Ryan, regarding communications regarding the clinic and CDC regulations or COVID-related cases. It became apparent to us that in very unethical ways, as I learned more and more about the board's policies on code of conduct and behavior, most stressfully of a school district staff, through 260 pages, which I don't know if any of the board has heard of these requests or looked at them or read them. it was apparent to us that Corey, yes, my husband, and I and actually our children are very much a discussion among other staff members as we all are working through this very trying time. Nobody knows really anything as we all really think about it. We're all each day waking up and trying to figure it out. And I know for some, they feel stressed or uncomfortable or dislike Corey Miller's emails or questions. I feel like others should also pay attention that there is reasoning for it. As a parent, that is our job, is to ask questions, is to challenge people that are trying to enforce things upon our children. And now, through those reminders, this open request was a very short period. I think it was more 24, 48 hours. It came up that our child's name came up because of a class they were in close conduct. He exchanged messages between another health staff member, how would you state it, a classification or where we stand on the items we own or partially own necessarily, or how he was not looking forward to be questioned regarding policies when those questions are coming because we are parents that work full-time. We are trying to understand what we need to be prepared for each day because something new could come up and we could be forced to be staying home and virtually teach 3 different classes. That's why we question the policy, and as we all know, it constantly changes. Our concern is
30 seconds, Rochelle.
I think it needs to be focused on, if parents need to start paying attention more to some of the staff members. I won't say all, because there are some good staff members, but very unethical, discriminatory towards families who do not comply with their thoughts and their behavior. Ask for these records, we have them, and I hope the board asks and looks at them too. Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle. Gary Hansen, address 1881 County Road C, Somerset.
Yes.
Gary, could you back up behind the podium? That's kind of where our cameras are.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, my name's Gary Hansen. I am registered as a candidate for the April 5th election, and just wanted to introduce myself to the current board members and to the public at large. One of my concerns was in investigating and trying to learn some of the details about the position. For instance, I tried to access the strategic plan for the district, and for some reason that's kept behind locked doors. On the you have to have special permission. I have it on emails that were sent to me, and yes, it was. So just that, and that information was very convoluted and difficult to discern. You had it color coded and in 5 different categories. And evidently some of it had been recently updated and some of it was crossed out. So just some of those type of things. I tried to find out what the borders of the district were, and again, that took the better part of 2 hours of me looking online in order to find the district boundaries. And they're also very convoluted, where little houses are kind of added into the borders. But I would like to have some of that type of stuff cleaned up in the future. So thank you, and I look forward to getting educated. I have been watching some of your board meetings on the video, and it's been somewhat educational. Thank you.
So, Mr. Hansen, you were able to find the strategic plan on the district website, it sounds like, from what you said?
No, it was sent to me in an email because when I tried to access from the website, it denied me access. So I filled out the information to request the access, and that was in turn, they granted me access, but when I again tried to access it, again it denied me, and then they sent it to me in the form of an email attachment that I was able to get access to it.
Huh, all right, because it is on our district.
He was trying to access an old file. Alicia sent him all the current stuff.
Okay, because it is on our district website and everybody should be able to access it.
Well, when you click on it, it says that you have to have special permission.
Okay, I guess I'll have to ask someone who doesn't have
We'll
a
take a look at it.
school district, you know, because when I click on it, it pops up, so I'll have to ask someone else to do it also, to check, just because everybody should have access to it. Mr. Miller?
Good evening, Happy New Year. We're really hoping to focus on unity this year, and excited to have a new board member. Nice to meet you, Michelle. I'm piggybacking on my wife Rochelle's comment, one comment prior. We were just really saddened and disturbed to get some of the open records about the staff having some conversation, you know, about us and our family, right over the time that decisions for the on-site testing were being done. It just so happened that one of our kids was marked as a close contact, and and the close contact email that describes the policy that I didn't know until that point, that clearly says if you're an unvaccinated kid or an unvaccinated household, you're going to have a higher quarantine time than a vaccinated one, and that just really tripped my trigger. Like, that's straight up discrimination on something, a vaccine that is experimental. Just the amount of risk for young kids. I mean, it's not new. We've been doing this for a year and a half, 2 years now. It's a very reasonable point to say, I just don't feel safe about this yet we're being discriminated for it. And when we send an email to Ryan and the staff to say, hey, can you clarify, you know, are you currently, and we couldn't get clear answers. And we were treated like we were asking terrible questions. And I was so confused. And then to find out that we're being mocked and kind of ridiculed and laughed at, you know, and I've got the exchanges here, and I'll follow up and email those to the board just so you can see them. And to get to a place of unity, I'm open to talk about any of it. You know, I know how difficult your jobs are, and I want you to trust that we're doing our best as parents for our kids. I'm less concerned about offending people, but reasonable adults should always be able to have an open, honest exchange and keep it professional. And I don't think I've ever crossed that line. If you're offended by some of the questions I ask, maybe you should check why you're offended, and let's just have open exchanges. And I think that would do more. That's the only way, I think, to get to unity. Shoving things under the rug and saying, oh, only certain viewpoints are allowed here is not going to help. There are so many parents that I talk to that are feeling the same, just not heard, not listened to. The reason we had to do a recall was a big group of parents felt unheard, and the community backed them up with that. So I really think to work better this year, we got to take more time to hear each other. So so I'm going to leave you with a few things that represent some of our views, and really it would mean a lot if you took the time to read them and then take those things into consideration for future policy and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you. All right then, item 6, district health update.
Now, I just want to take a couple of minutes here, just, you know, Ryan's here, and, you know, we've had, as you know, CDC has changed some of their quarantine policies, and up until last week, only one district has solely adopted the 5-day quarantine piece. The others were waiting for board discussion, what have you, and we, just with, our numbers are elevating right now. We're at a, I think Ryan can talk to this a little bit, but we're probably the highest we've been right now, which expected after the holiday break. But, we're monitoring this thing every day because we, have quite a number of staff out also, and that's gonna be the determiner of whether our buildings are open or not, if we can staff them. So we're kind of at a little tipping point right now, and we just have to watch it day by day. But Ryan, why don't you give an update on the memo you sent out and just how we've changed some of our quarantining times to coincide with the CDC recommendations?
Yeah, so I'll just start off with some of our numbers updates going here. So as of 2:35 this today, currently active with 27 cases for students, 6 staff out positive. As far as close contacts go, 43 out and 1 staff member. And then year to date for the school year, 279 cases up to this point so far. Again, I know it's kind of hard to read, but this is just the daily cases since the first week before we went into the break. So on the 19th up until now. Kind of over the break, we didn't really see too much. People were kind of on the holidays, they didn't really notify us. So those numbers are kind of spread out. As you can see, when we came back from the break, we got the notifications of students and staff who have tested positive. And then just kind of our high point there on the 3rd with 14 cases that we were notified about in one day. Kind of was just a big jump for us from where we had been kind of previously. But again, over the holiday break, kind of expected with everyone getting together. So nothing kind of, something we didn't anticipate was this high, but again, just getting together. We did intend for maybe a slight increase from where we originally were. And this is just the weekly cases since the week before the start of the school year. As you can see, we kind of started off a little slow. We had those couple weeks in November where we did jump to 31 and 37. Kind of went down a little bit there. Been staying kind of in the double digits for the weeks. Again, going over into December, kind of dropped down. Last week, we got to our second highest week so far with 34 cases since last week. And then this week currently, we are currently notified about 7 cases. And then it just goes over the cases in each building, so the high school in orange, middle school, elementary school, and then the early childhood building here. This just kind of goes over an overall case by building. This is both staff and students. So the high school is at 95, middle school 83, elementary school 88, and then the early childhood here at 13. So each building is kind of roughly around the same in terms of numbers. High school obviously is a little bit higher, but relatively around the same number for each building. And then this is just district transmission data, kind of going over how many individuals have tested positive, potentially where they tested positive from, whether they were identified as close contacts in schools, close contacts in the household, or the community. Community again being no confirmed cases that we know of, but they were testing positive, so we just categorize them without a known case as a community case. And so that's it for the numbers data piece of it. Any questions in regards to that at all? So I guess the next piece was, I know during the listening sessions, there were some questions that were brought up. I know Lacey, you had emailed me those questions, and hopefully I can help answer some of those questions that you did send over to me. So in regards to the testing site here at the district, the question was, where is it funding? Where's the funding coming from? And so the testing site is funded through the Wisconsin Department of Health Services. And so it's coming from the state, nothing directly coming from us. Asking about who our vendor is. So our vendor, their brand name is COVID Clinic. and they've been helping and paired up with multiple schools in the area. I know Osceola, New Richmond, Spring Valley, they've also been paired up with them as well. Another question that was brought up in regards to potentially what could be coming up next in regards to the possibility of vaccinations. So COVID Clinic is not authorized and they're not licensed to give vaccinations, so at this time there's no option for that at all. It's not even on the table for them. Again, not licensed or authorized to give any COVID vaccines for any individuals. And then also questions relating our current quarantining policies. So I can kind of go over that. So like we kind of discussed earlier, our current policy for positive cases is they will still be out quarantined 10 days from when their symptoms started or when they were tested, depending on whichever one comes first. So let's say I got tested today, no symptoms, I quarantined for 10 days. Let's say I started symptoms 4 days ago, but got tested today, my quarantine would start from when my symptoms first started 4 days ago. Again, it's quarantining for 10 days, and then returning on day 11. Our current close contact protocol gives the option of a 5-day quarantine, a 10-day quarantine, and a 14-day quarantine. We recently changed to the 5-day option, kind of in regards to the CDC changes. So with that change, individuals would need to quarantine for 5 days since last contact with a positive individual. After or on day 5, they are able to get tested, and if negative, they can return right away, as long as they're not showing any symptoms. Previously, it was a 7-day quarantine in which you could get tested on day 5, 6, or 7, and if negative, the soonest you could return was day 8. So we changed that this past week, in which you can get tested on day 5 at the earliest, and if negative, you could return right away, granted you're not developing any symptoms or showing any symptoms. We still allow for the 10-day quarantine, in which those who choose not to get tested would just have to quarantine for 10 days from their last contact with the positive individual, and they could return on day 10 or day 11. And then the 14-day option is just kind of the max length of quarantine that you can choose. It's not a chosen option very often, but still an option nonetheless. So similar to the 10-day, you'd quarantine for 14 days and return on day 15 if you chose the max length of quarantine. And again, for close contacts who are required to quarantine or need to quarantine, let's say a student in the classroom is identified as a close contact to somebody who tests positive. That individual does not need to quarantine unless they start to develop any symptoms, then they would fall into that category of needing to quarantine. If you live in the same household as somebody who's tested positive and you're unvaccinated, that individual would then need to quarantine. And again, using those 5, 10, or 14-day options. And then if you're an identified close contact and live with somebody, again, in the household who has tested positive and you start to develop any symptoms, so let's say I'm vaccinated, I live with my mom who's tested positive, but I start to show symptoms as a vaccinated individual, I will have to quarantine regardless of my vaccination status. Just because we know within the household, transmission is much higher than we've seen in the schools and kind of anywhere else in the community. So household transmission is fairly high, so that's kind of the reasoning behind those quarantining within the households. Yes.
Could you just go back real quick? I kind of missed what you said. The close contact in the classroom doesn't have to quarantine. Could you just start back there real quick?
Yeah, so let's say I'm a student in the classroom and one of my classmates tests positive, and I've been identified as being within 3 to 6 feet for 15 minutes or more with that student. I don't need to quarantine unless I develop any symptoms. So again, it doesn't matter your vaccination status, it comes back to if you're developing any symptoms.
So we don't have to, so students wouldn't have to quarantine unless they're showing symptoms. That's
Correct.
pretty much the bottom line?
Pretty much.
Vaccinated or non-vaccinated?
Correct.
Student, staff?
As a close contact.
So that's the new...
So that's been implemented all year. We haven't changed that at all as far as needing to quarantine. So since the start of the school year, we haven't quarantined students if they're just identified. You'd have to quarantine if you develop symptoms.
It's just within the house? household, that's the only time you'd have to quarantine then?
Or within the classroom. We do a light contact tracing just because I know parents and families still want to be notified if there's a close contact in the classroom.
But they don't have to quarantine if it's within their classroom.
Correct, as long as they're not showing symptoms.
As long as-
Yeah.
Okay, so that's,
Can you just talk then quick again, there was a lot of information that I was trying to pay
Yep,
attention
no
to.
problem.
Like Corey brought up the vaccination status, is there a point where you ask that question? And can you just kind of just go over that one more time,
Yep.
just so I make sure I heard it
Yep,
right?
so if there's a positive case in somebody's household, and there's other family members within the household, we do ask if they are vaccinated. I brought this up with Trevor, our legal counsel, I brought this up with the county. And so based on what I've been told from Trevor, I am within my rights to do so until I'm told otherwise that I can't. So I just kind of keep referring to Trevor because I know it's a touchy subject, just to make sure that I am within my rights to kind of continue to do so.
So can you just give me an example? So, family member in a household tests positive.
Yep,
Let's say parents are vaccinated, kids are not.
yep,
Once you're notified of that positive case in the house,
Mhm.
you would ask the question, is the student vaccinated or not?
correct.
Okay. If they are not, the students are not vaccinated, they're quarantined for how long?
They have the option that 5, 10, or 14 day.
So regardless of symptoms, they still have to quarantine?
Yep.
Okay.
and if if the student is vaccinated,
Yep,
do they still have to quarantine for 5 days?
Nope,
Or
they
as long as
can-
they're not showing symptoms?
as long as they're not showing symptoms,
Okay.
then they can
So that's,
resume.
I think, in my mind, what I'm hearing is, the only difference between a vaccinated person and a non-vaccinated is if the positive COVID case is within the household. That's when the vaccination status is the only time it matters, correct?
Yes,
And are you asking those questions to the students, or is that to the parent?
to the parents.
To the
Yep.
parent.
So I never talk directly to the students, it's always to the parents.
So this would be, you get information of a positive test in the house, as part of your follow-up,
Yep,
you reach out to the parent, and
Yep.
those are the questions.
always to the parents.
And one of the reasons we
So
went to the
once
five.
again, Ryan, I'm concerned because the test that we are using, the CDC told us over 6 months ago that it doesn't work. So we've got somebody with no symptoms who test positive. We are making them stay home if they're in an unvaccinated home.
Yep, so that's the direction I've been given from the county. So if the county tells me somebody needs to quarantine because they've tested positive, they treat that as a positive case, kind of regardless. So we've just been kind of piggybacking on what they do in terms of if somebody tests positive, we still treat it as a positive case.
But again, we as a district don't require anybody to get tested.
Correct. Yep,
No
there's
matter-
no requirement to
no
get
matter
tested
how
at
close or
all.
family, or
Correct.
you don't need even, you could do the 5-day and back to school without a COVID test, correct?
Nope, so you'd have to get tested to qualify for that 5-day
So you do have to get tested and
Yep.
negative on day 5.
for the early return.
Otherwise, you're out for 10 days.
Yep,
So you do have to do that. So you do have to get tested on day 5 to
yep,
come
to
back.
qualify for the early return.
Okay.
Within that, is it ever questioned, because we're talking so much about vaccination, vaccinated versus unvaccinated, is if they've had the antibody test, if they already have the antibodies, or if they've already had COVID in the last 3 months that they have that?
Yep.
I mean, is that in this, I mean, because I
Yes.
feel like there's so many moving parts of this, and as Matt's saying, like, hey, can you go back and repeat that? Because
Yeah,
if somebody were to say, okay, I'm not vaccinated, but I have antibodies, or this is my reason for not getting XYZ, like, where does that come into play?
yep, so if you've tested positive for COVID in the past 90 days, 3 months, you are exempt. You kind of fall into the, I guess you could say quote unquote, the vaccination status of not having to quarantine. So let's say I tested positive for COVID 2 weeks ago, I'm unvaccinated, and my mom tests positive. Me testing positive 2 weeks ago, I'm within my 90-day window of meeting the criteria to not have to quarantine. As far as the actual antibody test, I brought that up with the county health department because I know individuals have gotten that test and then have become close contacts. At this time, they aren't recognizing the antibody test as a criteria to not have to quarantine. So let's say I got tested for the antibodies, I'm a close contact, unvaccinated, kind of the antibody test wouldn't get me out of the criteria to not have to quarantine, if that makes sense.
Ryan, do you have more information to go over with us?
The only other thing that I kind of wanted to bring up, that we were just notified today in regards to the testing site. So due to the increased amounts of individuals requesting the rapid testing, I know this is going to be kind of unfortunate news, but at this time, with the high demand of the rapid testing, they are running short supply of the rapid tests right now. So kind of in the next couple days here, they have a short supply of the rapid test for our testing site. Once that is out, we're kind of just waiting for the Department of Health Services to kind of give us more supply of that. So we would just be running the PCRs after we run out of the antigen tests, just with that influx of.
And you can't test for that until day 5?
Yep.
If we're using it to come back to
Yeah,
school or whatever.
correct. Yep, correct.
Or if we have symptoms.
Mm-hmm. Correct. So if I want to get tested tomorrow just because I wanted to, I can still go in. It's not strictly just for close contacts, it's for anybody in the district to get.
When, from your conversations with whatever all your stuff you're doing, have you heard when they're going to go away from having to test on 5 days, or when you're just symptom free?
So that we kind of discussed as an admin team here with the admin team for the qualifying to test to come back. At this time, there's no real requirement to test to come back. But after discussion with the administration team, we still kept that quote-unquote 4, 10, and 17-day quarantine from previously and just adopted with the 5 instead of 7. So at this time, there's no real requirement to get tested, but we discussed and we continued to implement just to get tested to return.
But again, the only people who have to really get tested is if it's within your own house. If you're a close contact school, you don't need to get tested.
Kind of. Again, nobody needs to get tested. So let's say I'm a household contact, close contact. I still am not required to get tested at all.
I'm just saying, you don't have to be out of school if you don't have any symptoms, if you're deemed a close contact at school.
Correct, yep.
Only if you're a close contact because it's within your house.
Correct, yep.
That you need to be out for any time,
Correct.
no matter what.
And the only time the school district is requiring a test is for people who want to come back the earliest, which would be day 6.
Day 5. So
You got tested on day 5?
Yep, so let's say today is day 5 and it's 7 a.m. in the morning. If I were to get tested at 7 a.m. on day 5 and come back negative, I could come essentially to school that same day.
Oh, so day 5. Okay.
And that's a school district requirement, not CDC. So that's
Correct.
what the administration is requiring.
Correct.
And then with the short supply of the rapid tests, that will be kind of a problem if we don't have those tests to give. If they come in at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning to say I'm at day 5, I can't.
Yeah, so kind of blindsided today by that. I wasn't notified until the end of the school day from that, that the supply is short, so they are in limited supply. So I'll be reaching out to them, kind of keeping in contact to say, hey, what's our outlook looking like for these rapid tests before they are kind of back, and so that it's a little more convenient for our staff and our families.
And could you share that information with us? Because I think that goes back to like one of the big reasons that we said yeah, let's do this, because our kids can get that rapid test. I
Yep.
mean, I know that that's out of your hands, but that was kind of one of the needs for the COVID clinic, was because we wanted our kids to be in school and to be able to take that test.
Yep.
Has it ever been talked about, and I know that this probably is where, who pays for it or things, that is providing the at-home test? Like for a staff member, so if they, instead of, I know like in the district where I work, I can access that, so instead of having to access it at school, I can request that. Has that ever been brought up?
So, yeah.
We talked about,
So I can reach out to the Department of Health Services to see if that's an option. We did, when we filled out the survey, to initially opt for testing at the schools to see if there was an option to allow at-home tests. Unfortunately, they didn't give us that option when we were paired up with our vendor. But I can kind of continue to reach out to see if that is an option kind of going forward to be provided that for the district. So I'll kind of.
I go back, I listen to some of the feedback that I've heard from parents and different things. It's not necessarily not wanting it, but some of the pushback as far as it being in the school. You know, so just what are other options, especially as you say that a rapid test might not even be available at that clinic. Like, you know, I know a lot of people now are going the at-home route and getting the tests on their own and getting that, but I know that that's, you know, they're having a hard time finding those at times, or the cost of getting those as well. So I would just be interested if that's an option at all.
Yeah, I can definitely reach out to see what we can do for that. So again, when we initially filled out the survey, we were hoping that was going to be our go-to, but they paired us up with a vendor instead. So I'll see if there's any other options for us for that. So.
When do you think you'd reevaluate the 5-day at-home positive, you're vaccinated, non-vaccinated? I think, because right now I think that's the only hang-up really that we,
Yeah.
is the only difference between the two scenarios.
Not exactly sure when we would set date to reevaluate. It's just kind of a day-by-day basis to see, hey, what are we kind of seeing in terms of trends? Are we still seeing individuals still sick? Day 6, 7 of quarantine, which we have been kind of seeing. A lot of individuals who are out on quarantine testing positive are sick for that 10-day. Whether the severity is, I'm not too sure, but we do get phone calls coming in. Student A is still sick. I know I'm past my 10 days. It's going to be marked against me for missing. So just kind of having that as our fallback for those students who are ill kind of helps save parents those parent excuse days for not having to use those.
you know, right now, as Ryan said, our numbers are escalating right now, and we just have to be very careful, for students and staff, and just really monitor this. Once we start seeing that go down, I think I would feel more comfortable as far as revisiting our quarantining times and some of these pieces that we have in play. And that was the feeling of the admin team last week, because even when the CDC went to the 5-day, they were getting shot at. And, it just, if our numbers were going like this here, okay, we can probably ease off, just like the clinic. We're gonna watch that, monitor the use of that clinic. If numbers are down, we don't need it anymore, we're done with it. But right now, people can't get tests.
Right.
And so, we're gonna do everything we can, we're at high alert right now, there's no other way to say it, because our numbers are up. They're up as high as they've ever been, even last year, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So again, we're just approaching this with caution.
Now, are we tracking the positive cases of those who are vaccinated, like in particular with staffing?
I definitely can. I haven't been, but it's easy enough to kind of pull that information.
We've had 2 of our highest numbers of positives in St. Croix County in the past 4 days. I mean, higher than ever since the pandemic started.
I would be interested in what Cherie just asked as well. I think when I hear, and I understand the policy and where you're coming from, but when I hear that, okay, if this child is from a vaccinated household versus unvaccinated, you can go to school or you can't. And that to me just feels, it feels uneasy that we're saying this kid can be in school and this kid can't be. And I know that there's some districts, there's some entire states who have gone to the point to even, and I think I had sent this just kind of wording that you're not requiring quarantine of students regardless of vaccination recent, but people who test positive are required to isolate. And I get it, but I think that there's also things, as I'm talking about, kids that, or adults that already have the antibodies, okay? Because if my child has the antibodies, they might not have had COVID, but I'm not gonna then probably rush them to get vaccinated. There's a lot of things with blood type, there's a lot of things with other health or things explaining why somebody might not have gotten vaccinated. And then I think right now, I agree, the numbers are so incredibly high, but a lot of people that are getting vaccinated are still getting COVID. I've definitely not to the extent, I mean, a lot of the things are being hospitalized, but then just that piece of then if somebody does not have any symptoms and they're healthy, but somebody at home is sick but they're not vaccinated, I go back to, okay, prior to COVID, if you had the flu or a parent was very sick at home, they usually aren't going, sharing cups with their kids, they're kind of off to the side and the whole family doesn't stop because of that at points. I just urge us to keep looking at that and to look at, because then you have the pieces of, there's so many people that are COVID positive that at one point everybody has been exposed or have had it.
Oh, yeah, I agree, Lacey, and I'm getting closer to that where everybody who's had a chance or wants to be vaccinated, which supposedly is, again, this is hypothetical, but your symptoms are less severe than someone who who isn't vaccinated. So all the people who've had a chance to get vaccinated are vaccinated or should be vaccinated. So, students and staff alike. So that 5 days to me is, if there's no symptoms and that student is fine, I don't know why we'd be holding people out if they're not sick anymore. And I get it, but if you're not passing, if you are vaccinated, your symptoms should be less if you do get COVID. So I guess, so to your point is I keep pushing what we can do so people aren't missing school and aren't coming to school sick, but aren't missing, or keeping them out longer because of potential.
I do want us to be careful, however, about staying open, and if we have, it's if we have a certain number of staff who are testing positive, that we're gonna have to shut down. And I want us to try to prevent that, whatever that takes.
Yep.
To keep us in-person learning, because we know that's what's best for kids, is to have them in school. So whatever we need to do to keep our doors open, my personal individual preference is to do that.
I agree. I think you guys have done a good job. I also just would echo from both of them. I'm concerned about the vaccination question status about households, because if it's not a thing in the classroom, I'm curious as to why it is just because it's at home. So I'd urge you to give that some thought. I don't like it, but I appreciate the work that has gone into keeping the building open, and I respect the staff that are struggling to come in and make those decisions. But I'd urge you to maybe continue to give thought to that vaccination thing, because I don't like how that sits.
Does anybody have any further comments or questions for Ryan or Mark regarding the district health update? Mark, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Nothing else. That was a great 10-minute update. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're gonna pull it off the protocols.
Ryan, Would
Stay within
you,
time.
is it all right, is it possible for you to, I know it's after the fact, but could your presentation be linked to the agenda?
It is.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, it is now?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is now.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you.
What was not earlier?
No.
Trent, are you here? Would you like to talk about the athletic overnight trip?
Yes, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, back in October, we had a whole slate of overnight athletic trips approved, which is standard operating procedure for us. At that time, there was one that was not approved at that point because we were still trying to finalize where and what that trip would actually be. And that's for our softball team. We've now narrowed that down and would like to have them go down to Boston early April, which is actually a very similar event that baseball is at, I believe that same weekend. Great opportunity for our kids to be playing down on the turf. As we know, weather in Northwest Wisconsin or anywhere in Wisconsin can be iffy, and they've had a good track record of being able to get those tournaments in on those weekends. And looking at the field that's playing down there of teams, there are a couple of teams from our sectional on the other side of our sectional that are participating in that, so it'd be a great opportunity for our kids to potentially see some of those teams before they would get to the postseason.
Thank you, Trent. This is going to come back to our regular session for voting. I do have a question, and you might not have the answer right now, so perhaps you could address it at the regular session on the 24th. I'm just wondering, is there an average number of days that kids are missing school to go on these trips, or is it all on the weekend? Does it vary by trip?
So I don't have that answer off the top of my head right now. I know it does vary by trip. Typically though, these are ones that take place either during, like I think about boys and girls basketball and boys hockey here that just went on trips. Those were during the winter break, so there was no school impacted. Baseball and softball, then when they go on theirs, they would miss some of school on Friday and then play on Saturday. Thing with that is we don't typically know the schedule until closer to it. They play 3 games when they're down there. 2 of them might be on Friday and 1 on Saturday, or vice versa. It just depends on how the rest of the schedule shakes out.
Okay, so do they ever leave on a Thursday morning, so they miss 2 days of school?
Not typically, and in these instances, usually they play later on Friday, so they would not leave until Friday.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Did anybody else have any questions for Trent? All right, thanks a lot, Trent.
Thanks, Trent.
Yep.
Mark, the open enrollment chart?
Yeah, if you want to pull that chart up, I'll walk through it very quickly. Now, Cherie's off, she's at an appointment, so she's done. Okay. So this is a chart, this is something I've turned into the state every year, and what it does is tells the state, what we have for capacity as far as kids open enrolling. If we deny an open enrollment and it shows we have capacity, they'll hold us accountable to that, with the exception of special ed if we don't have programs. But if you look at the main part of the graph here, on column A, you just have all the grade levels. B is the class size for open enrollment. Now this doesn't mean this is our class size or we're going to. This just means we have seats for this many people should we choose to go this route. And column C is what is our building capacity as far as how many classrooms do we have available. So we're basically a 5-section school across the board. We have classrooms for that. If we multiply C times B, that's 6 times 22. That gives us our capacity in a fully packed building, and you can see 1782 would be our total capacity. Now these numbers will come into play when we start talking about our construction and what we're looking at for the future. Right now, in column E, our projected enrollment for next year for 22-23 would be 1439. Again, that's rolling these numbers forward, for next year. So F gives you really the spaces that are available. And again, we can play with the column B, but we want to encourage open enrollment. You know, we want kids coming in, so we want to provide spaces for them. You know, it's like what happened to us in 5th grade. If we get to a certain size, we want to add a section, you know, we can. And right now, we're having these discussions in admin as far as what our class size and what our sections are going to look like next year. If you look down at the special ed right below that column, or right below that main graph, you know, special ed is a different area, because we can deny enrollment into special ed if we don't have the programs for the kids. So that's about the only area we can deny. And then the rest of the numbers are, you know, you can read this for yourself here, but basically we have, if we were at full capacity with these numbers, we'd have almost 350 seats available, which would, again, will come into future discussion when we start talking about, you know, the whole referendum and sizes, you know, when we're dealing with all these houses coming in here too. Do we look at being proactive or what have you? So, but the purpose of this is to turn into the state so we can show what we have seats for. So in case we deny somebody that doesn't like it, they can say, hey, you have capacity, you have to take this person. So we do this every year.
Mhm. So this will move forward to the January
Yep.
24th regular session for
Correct.
official board approval.
Uh-huh.
The next item then, you alluded to, the facility meeting discussion.
Correct. So we'd like to have, we can't have four board members unless we, you know, post it as a meeting. I'd like to have at least 2 board members at these facility discussions. First one's gonna start on Wednesday. Now, you should have gotten a note. We're gonna move it to the elementary school cafeteria just to spread out a little bit, because we got 30-some people, and we're not gonna sit in a classroom back here with 30-some people, just with the events going on right now. So it's gonna move to 6 o'clock on Wednesday, but I would like at least 2 people, and whoever wants to sit on that. Bruce, I think you did last time on that, but again, if I can get 2 names, it'll be.
I would like to.
Yeah, I can't do Wednesdays for the
For the-
foreseeable future.
Is the meeting like once a month? Is it?
Well, we're having a meeting on Thursday with our bond council, because we have to back up dates. You know, I think you have to make a decision whether you're gonna go out for referendum sometime in the end of July or August. So we wanna make sure we have enough time. So typically they go every probably 2 or 3 weeks to start out with. Because we just, you know, we start out 50,000 foot, you know, why we're looking at this and what have you. And Wold and Market Johnson Wold will basically be facilitating the discussions just like they did with our last referendum. And we'll determine at that Wednesday, is Wednesday the best night for the group or not? So they're very flexible. So.
I would be willing.
So we have 2 board members who are committing, at least to the first meeting, Lacey and Matt.
Okay, I'll put you
I'd
2
be
down then.
Open if it wasn't Wednesday, or, you know, if it's gonna be after February 19th or something, then I'm free.
Yeah, we'll see what happens Wednesday night. Okay,
And
that's.
I'm sorry, I didn't ask the other board members if they had any other questions on the open enrollment chart. Did any of you have any questions on that?
No, can I move? This is super, super quick. That's just the possible sections.
Right.
So
Yeah,
that's not, that has not been determined officially for next year as far as sections for each grade.
No, we're looking at it right now.
Okay.
And depending on what, you know, there's several scenarios and things that, you know, we gotta take budget into account and what have you, you know, what this ESSER dollars does if, you know, if we're gonna be really short, we might have to look at, you know, condensing down, so. Again, but right now, we're just in those discussions. And that'll all come back to the board.
Okay, thank you.
As recommendations.
And there is an official date by which people have to turn in their open enrollment things, but there's also a workaround on that where you can practically request an open enrollment all year long. Do you recall off the top of your head what the official open?
I think it's March 31st.
Was it March or April?
Thought it was March, because I remember trying to miss it.
You know, and the funny thing is we get hit with all this like in August. You know,
Yeah.
people are moving and they're shuffling around, you know, no one thinks of that right now, so.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, we want open enrollment, we'll accommodate, within our parameters, and like you say, we had to add that 5th grade section because all of a sudden, boom, we had 5 more kids in that grade level, and we'll adjust to it.
So item number 10 then, if everybody's ready to go on? Okay.
So basically, number 10 is, we were talking about incentivizing, our current staff to cover classes, and, the rate was like $13.50 an hour, which was, not much. So we're proposing to up it to, full hour pay based on a BA 0 schedule, which would be around, I think it's $27.97, so $28. It's, it's just another incentive to cover classes. And so that'll change the language in the handbook.
Can I ask a question, Mark, on that one? So if they do a mod, like that's the reason I asked about mod time, that's 25 minutes. Right? 27 minutes. So they get a half hour then for covering a mod, so they get $14 for covering a mod then?
Good question, that hasn't come up yet.
So that was my question.
No, that's a good question, it hasn't come up, so, we'll probably have to figure out a way to prorate it. So, because right now the impact, the impact isn't that great, we just want to make sure we're treating people fairly.
Personally, this is how I was looking at it, is that if you're covering a mod, that's 20 minutes or half hour of your prep time that you're losing. Well, now you need to make up that half hour anyway. So if you cover a mod or cover a class, and granted, if mods change, this could kind of change a little bit, but you get a full hour if you cover at the $28. That's just my take on it. Because you're gonna have to make up that lost time somewhere, and if you're in your lunch, I mean, that's your time, that's overtime in my book. So you get you cover a mod, you get 28. That's just my take.
So what if you're at the middle school and you're covering a 50-minute class?
You get an hour. I guess if you go in and fill in, that's, yeah, I get it. The mod at the high school, you cover a class. At least I guess you get the full. If you
The language does say it compensated at the full rate of the hourly base wage.
Hourly, but I'm just saying, if you cover for a mod, you're only gonna get $14, so you'd have to cover for 2 to get, but, I mean, if we want people to be filling these and why are we gonna say, you only get $14 when you're still gonna make up that time? Grant, I guess, yeah, an hour and a half.
But I'd read that language as, if you accept that, you get the full rate, no matter how long. There's no talk of amount of time.
Yeah, I think it's hour per hour.
Well, it was based on an hourly piece.
Right.
So if you're only covering a mod, that's 30 minutes, you'd only get paid for 30 minutes.
You get the hourly rate, so if it's 0.5 of an hour, you get 0.5 of the hourly rate.
Doesn't, I guess the way I'm thinking in it, I guess now it makes it more difficult. If you cover for somebody, from 27 minutes to the hour, you get the whole hourly rate, because you're up to 50 minutes. I mean, if you're covering for somebody for 2 classes and it's 120 minutes, or
I'm gonna see how prevalent that is, though. That's a good question. The other, I don't wanna say clinker in this, is that we're trying to figure out, and we're arguing about this, is when you split classes at the elementary.
That's gonna be my next
And so that's
question.
another one that, I did find out from some area superintendents, how there is additional dollars attached when you split classes. So like in elementary, 3rd grade, one person's out, they divide them up into the other 3 or 4 sections. What's the compensation for that?
Those extra students.
So again, Dave and I are having some discussions on that one, so.
Because this language doesn't address any of the elementary staff.
So, but that's, this is really dealing with what we've got going at the middle school and high school right now.
Well, if though an elementary staff
Yeah,
were
if they
to
do.
take their
Yep.
prep to cover.
Yeah, and it does happen at times, but it's more prevalent at the middle school and high school.
I would be interested though, exactly, that was gonna be my question as well, like if you take a class and divide it into 3, then
Right,
does
that's-
that hourly
that's-
pay get divided into 3 and dispersed
Yeah, that's
equally
the
among those 3
discussion
teachers?
right now we're having, so.
Or if you had been able to get a sub, do you take that sub pay and
divide it
divide
up.
it equally by
Yeah.
the 3?
So you might see something added to this at at the meeting. But-
Because it is money that we're not spending on the sub that could be.
Right, so it's really gonna kind of be a zero impact piece, and I'd rather compensate people fairly.
So it'd be 140, but then if you broke it into 3 year, you know, $50 or so a day per teacher.
Anything we do on this line is not gonna be a huge impact, so I just wanna make sure we're compensating people.
Well, it's not going to be a huge impact financially on the district, but it does have a big impact on our individual staff.
Definitely, and I'm talking financially. Yeah, I'm talking financially. So that'll be on, and maybe expect something along the elementary lines also at the second
So when
meeting.
this comes back to the 24th meeting, it may be updated.
Right. Mhm.
Does
Thank you
anybody
for
have
getting
further
that.
questions on this item?
Yeah, if you could, I mean, just as you guys work through, if you could send it just to keep us in the loop, I guess,
Yeah.
before that meeting.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Then our next item then is a representative for the WASB Delegate Assembly. I got an email, I think it was just Friday afternoon, that the convention has decided to make it part available to districts who are not going to the convention in person, to have every district who goes to the convention has a designated person who goes to the assembly, and they vote on those 10 resolutions that we approved back in December. So if we had people going to the convention in Milwaukee in January, one of the people would become our appointed voter. WASB has now made the option available to do that remotely. So is there a board member who would like, and I linked all the information about it, or I sent it to Alicia, and Alicia linked it. So all the information about what it is and what's entailed and how we do it is all there. Is there anybody who would like to take that appointment, to be that representative for the Somerset School District?
Is it then during those times, during the day?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's on Wednesday, January 19th, and it starts at 1:30. There's other times to get information, extra information, but to actually do the voting, it would be on Wednesday, January 19th at 1:30.
I'm looking, I can't.
Right. I know it's during the workday, so most people cannot. So if it does fit into your schedule and you're interested, let me know. Otherwise, I am available and I can do that. But if you'd like to email me, if someone else is interested, please do so. The next item on the agenda, listening session procedures and practices. So we had our first one in December, and Lacey and Matt and I were there. And afterward, thinking about it, I thought there were some things that we maybe should discuss doing in the future. Typically, when we have public comment or at our annual meeting in September, when anybody who lives in the district can participate and vote, people sign in. And I'm wondering if, I understand we're not taping it, and we're doing that on purpose for people who want to participate, but not be in the live streams. But just for our own record and knowledge, I was thinking we should probably have some kind of sign-in so we know who's there. I remember Lacey asking you after that meeting, there were some people I wasn't sure who they were. You know, maybe we should have a sign-in sheet for those listening sessions.
That wouldn't be a bad idea. You should have a record of who comes in.
And I think we would also want to know that they're members of the district.
So that they live here?
Yeah.
That would be good.
And then Lacey, you did a really good job sending that email to Ryan with the, a summary of the questions that were asked. And Bruce and I talked about this when we went over the agenda prior to it being posted. That after the listening session, and we did this, the three of us in our December meeting, giving a summary to all the board members of the main topics that were discussed, and if there were suggestions or recommendations or requests. So if we discuss that at our regular board meeting following the listening session, then it would become part of our regular board minutes. So we don't necessarily have to have somebody at the listening session taking minutes, but when we summarize it for the rest of the board members, it becomes part of the minutes of the regular session. Does that make sense? So those were the two pieces I thought of after, you know, knowing who was there and having some kind of record of what was discussed.
And typically, you have one of the board members just report out, you know, agenda item here, listening session topics, and whatever 2 or 3 of the topics that came up.
So does that sound like a good idea to everybody?
I like both of those ideas.
Okay. And then in December, we had a little bit of a problem with the door being open. Is there the door was locked? I was able to get the attention of a custodian, and she let me in. And then I sat by the door until someone got here who could unlock the door.
Yeah.
So we just need to make sure that,
Well, I'll be here for the next one.
okay. Well, but if something
Yeah.
happens, you know.
No, that's,
We need to make sure.
you know, again, this came from, used to, my past district, and, you know, I was always there for a number of reasons.
No, I'm
Yeah.
saying
Sometimes
that we
people
need a
want to talk to me
backup.
too.
It's kind of like the notary, you know, we need a
What's the
backup.
backup, yeah.
Well, somebody moved the key on me. So I didn't know where it was.
All right, is there anything else on that item then?
Just a quick question, who picks the topics for these?
The people who come to see us.
Okay.
It's just an opportunity for people to come in and meet one-on-one
More
Okay.
informally.
with a board member to,
So up to 3, and Michelle should probably get that link to that
I'll
sign
I'll
up,
send it to you right now.
Okay.
and they can just sign up for a meeting.
Okay.
just so we have 3 or less people there at 5 before the meeting starts. Just to- Yeah.
Got it.
Through it.
You're gonna include me this time.
Yes, you can be included.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
You're a board member now.
Yeah, I am.
Can I just add her to the, is that okay?
Mhm.
And are we just gonna have, Alicia, like if you just make up put it on a clipboard, so it's not formal that they have to state their name and everything, but they can
Right,
just sign
yeah,
up?
just
No,
sign
we'll have a
in.
sign-in sheet.
Perfect.
That's how it is at the annual meeting, people just sign in.
Perfect, I like that. Well, and I think even just to follow up with people too, you know, which is just to know like, hey, you're validated and things.
All right, if there's nothing else on that item, then we can move to topics for action. Would anybody care to make a motion?
Just wanted to look real quick at the donation. Good.
Bruce, were you gonna make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve. It was 13A, 1 and 2, B, 1, C.
All right, so Bruce has made a motion to approve all the items in the topics for action. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Matt. Are there any questions or discussion regarding any of these? The personnel update, the athletics activities personnel update, payment of invoices, and the donations.
Thanks for the donations.
Yes, thank you.
Mike and Mike. Mike, thank you.
All right, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And then this last item on the agenda, Michelle, is a time where each of the board, we go around the table and each of the board members has an opportunity to bring up a topic that they wish to have addressed at a future board meeting. So March, is it all right if I start with you?
Sure. How was the survey going?
Well, I'm working with school perceptions, and
Okay.
we're actually, I think tomorrow, we talk once a week on just formulating, so we're just going through the steps. You know, anticipated deployment is probably the end of January, first part of
Right.
February, and that, so there's a few components to it that we're just gathering some more data on it, but it's gonna happen.
Okay.
Matt?
I have nothing.
Okay. I don't have anything at this time. Bruce?
Two things, nice job on the team for protocols. We just need to get that done. We haven't updated them in 5 years, I think is what we saw, so I think it's good for this team. I think it's something almost for the beginning, we should probably think about it even again in the spring with the 2 new board members, just hey, check it again, or in the summer. Just make that more of a recurring thing than just leaving them on, so we actually think about them, bring our attention again. And then the other one was, have we talked about, or have we had any more follow-up with McGrath on how that's coming along?
Yeah, Dave and I just had a meeting with her last week, and just talked about parameters of what we're looking for. And again, we're looking for, an update of, really base wages around the area, see if we're keeping pace there. Different incentives that other districts are looking at or that are implementing, because the game has changed, they're finding ways to steal our people. And then looking at some internal merit or incentive programs. So those are 3 things that we're having her look at.
When do we anticipate anything from her?
I don't have a timeline for you yet.
Or any information?
We just had that first discussion with her now, so I'm assuming that she's gonna get working on it, fairly soon. We identified the comparable districts, which are very similar to what we had last time, so we have some consistency.
And then, along the same lines, with that ESSER money, with the budget, do we know when we're gonna have an update on, the class sizes and how, if we have to do anything staffing wise next year? I know we've been talking about class sizes, and do we lose a section, gain or moving things around within our school, because some of these positions were approved 1 year, I think.
Yeah, so what I can tell you right now, until we, again, it's a moving target with the ESSER pieces. We're just in those discussions now, what we want, what we want the schools to look like, because there's a lot of talk on, do we want to work with instructional coaches, do we want to change things internally, my thing is we're not gonna add any people, as long as we're, in that slight drop there, new staff are not an option, so it's, how do we move forward with, internal, changes? To give you a good example, Sarah got Joe Hutter at a zero-sum piece because she was able to manipulate her world over there, so it didn't cost us any additional dollars. And that's kind of when you're at a stagnant enrollment or dropping, you've got to look at, do we refill positions that when people leave? So those, we're juggling a few balls with that. because, you know, we could see a deficit next year, and that's something that'll come to the board, how do we wanna address that? You know, you would address it, you know, 80% of our budget is people, so you really make an impact when you know, don't fill positions, or you reduce sections, or, you know, what have you. And so we'll be coming to you with some recommendations of what that looks like. Now, again, you know, we're in good enough shape financially, fund balance, where we can withstand spending some fund balance, but it's not a good habit to be in. And that would be one of the questions of this board is, do you want a balanced budget, or are we willing to take somewhat of a hit out of the general fund to maintain class sizes? Because in all reality, that's, you know, you try to attack budget deficits outside of the classroom, but that only lasts so long. I mean, there's some things that you just have to, you know, make some hard decisions on. But that's gonna be a question that's gonna come to you is, you know, are we gonna hold the line flat, balanced budget, or do we, you know, eat some fund balance up? Because that fund balance is our checkbook, it's a one-time money. Once it's spent, it's gone.
Well, Mark, that's kind of like, you know, we're talking about incentives and how do we increase and keep people and pay them more and give them more wanting to be here. But we're talking about 80% of our budget is people, and we're gonna have to cut positions to get either A, within budget, or B, to get these incentives to keep people. So I mean, we're in a really tricky spot, is what I'm just trying everybody to be thinking about, that yeah, we're getting this from McGrath, but we're gonna be on that line of what our budget is. And
You know, and the way things are going with inflation, blah, 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 what have you.
yeah,
You know, she gave us some things that I think shocked Dave a little bit as far as what we're gonna need to look at. So again, it'll all come back to the board.
okay.
So,
In conjunction with Bruce's comments, I'm expecting that our insurance rates are gonna be hugely increased.
We should be good for this year coming up, I think, because it wasn't a 2-year thing,
Didn't you just have a meeting with
or was it only 1 year?
with our, yeah,
Color?
we did, in fact, we have another one this week, you know, with them to kind of zero in on. You know, we're looking at self-insured also, we're just looking at ways to bring this insurance, our insurance costs down.
Not taking a $300,000 hit.
And it was just April of 2019 that we added an additional $1 million to our operational budget.
I know.
20, 21, 22, 3 years. And now we're saying we're out of money again?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, 600 was insurance, 700.
Yeah, it was, you know, when that came in, we were looking at about a $700,000 deficit when we got that million. So that's,
Well, you remember you talked about wanting 1.2, and we probably couldn't get 1.2.
right, but again, you know, we look at the surveys, what the community will support, and, you know, knock on wood, we got what we asked for. And, you know, that's another, we have to consider, you know, you can ask 2 questions once a year. So, I mean, if we look at our referendum next fall, a bond, you know, like we did, we asked a bonding question and an expenditure, or operational, and, you know, whenever you add spaces, you know, that increases your operating costs. So it's almost hand in hand that you're gonna have to ask for an operational piece too. So again, we're gonna have a lot more discussion on this as we go. But you're right, good memory there on that one, because I knew what we wanted,
But we had to get what we were gonna get, otherwise we wouldn't,
Yeah, I
anything,
mean-
we wouldn't be able to do any of it if we didn't get the
yeah,
million.
yeah.
Obviously.
So Michelle, is there anything that you'd like to add?
No, I'm very new, and so I will bring something around to the next.
You're not required to.
I know.
Yeah, you don't have
No
to.
pressure to say something. No, I appreciate just, you guys welcoming me, and, I'm learning a lot, and so, I look forward to the emails and more information I get. You laugh, but just at least to get the information ahead of time for the next meeting, and, yeah, I'm here. But I have nothing to talk about in the future right now.
Lacey?
Welcome, Michelle. Thanks for being here. Otherwise, I think I asked all my questions throughout the meeting. I'm good.
All right then, I will take a motion to adjourn the meeting at 7:25 PM.
I'll make the motion to adjourn at 7:25 PM.
Thank you, Marge. Is there a second?
I second that.
Thank you, Lacey. All in favor?
Aye.
Grab your little
Meeting
packets.
is adjourned.
All three of these go together?